my fiancée asked for a break. To get back with her ex 3 months before the wedding, I gave her permission, but canceled everything immediately, sold the house, and vanished. Now she's desperately begging for another chance, but it's too late. I'm 30 years old, I work in marketing, and it's been like 6 months since I ended my engagement with the person I thought was going to be my wife. The truth is, I still have a hard time processing everything that happened, but I guess I need to tell it because basically my entire life changed in the space of like 2 weeks. And when I say everything changed, I mean literally everything, from where I live to how I view relationships. But anyway, let me start from the beginning, because if not, none of this is going to make sense. I met Paige like 4.5 years ago, maybe 5. I don't remember the exact date, but I know it was in the summer because it was insanely hot, and she was at this coffee shop with her laptop working on something, and I walked in, basically dying of thirst after going out for a run like an idiot under the midday sun. She was a freelance graphic designer, you know? She worked from wherever she felt like, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Because I was tied to an office Monday through Friday, we started talking, exchanged numbers, and you know how it is. We started dating, and everything flowed incredibly well. She was funny, smart, we had the same taste in movies and music, and she made me laugh all the time. My friends adored her, my family adored her, like it was the perfect situation, or so I thought. And the first 2 years were great, seriously. I have no complaints about that period. We traveled together, I met her whole family, she met mine. We moved in together like a year and a half into dating because basically we were already living together anyway. She spent every night at my apartment. We bought a house together. Well, technically I bought it, but she helped decorate it and we considered it ours, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. My friends started getting married, having kids, all that stuff, and I started thinking it was time to take the next step. I proposed on our 3-year anniversary. Did the whole romantic thing, fancy dinner, nice ring that cost me like 3 months' salary, and she said yes. She cried and everything, hugged me and told me I was the most amazing man she'd ever met, and that she couldn't wait to be my wife. You know what it feels like when the person you love tells you that? It's like the whole world makes sense for a moment. We started planning the wedding almost immediately. Well, she started planning the wedding almost immediately, and I basically nodded and paid for everything. But that seemed fine to me because she looked so happy. We picked a date for like a year after the engagement, booked the venue, hired the photographer, started looking at catering options, all that stuff couples do when they're engaged. During the first few months, she was super excited. She'd send me pictures of dresses all the time, ask my opinion about flowers that honestly all looked the same to me, but I pretended I could see the difference. And we'd talk about the honeymoon we wanted to take in Italy. Everything was going well, or so I thought. Like 6 months into the engagement, I don't know, I started noticing something had changed. Paige wasn't talking about the wedding as much anymore. She wasn't sending me dress pictures, and when I brought up the subject, she'd kind of change the conversation or say we'd talk about it later. I figured maybe she was stressed with work because she'd mentioned having several big projects, so I didn't give it much thought. But the thing is, she started acting different in general, not just about the wedding. She went out more with her friends, which is obviously fine, but like she'd come home super late, and when I asked how it went, she'd just say fine and go to sleep. She started spending more time on her phone, laughing at things she didn't share with me, and when I asked what was so funny, she'd say nothing, just silly internet stuff. What really should have alerted me was one night like 2 months, before everything exploded. We were at a party at Tristan's house, my best friend since college, and someone suggested playing that stupid game where you have to answer hypothetical questions like, if you could go back in time, what would you change? What famous person would you want to have dinner with? That kind of thing. The question for Paige was something like, if you could relive any past relationship, knowing what you know now, which one would it be? And she, without hesitating for even a second, said her relationship with Colin, her ex-boyfriend from college. Everyone went quiet for a moment, like that kind of awkward silence where nobody knows whether to laugh or change the subject. And I tried to play it cool and said something like, oh well, that relationship ended because he cheated on you, but I guess it has good memories too. And she just smiled and said, yes. That despite how it ended, it had been a very intense and meaningful relationship. After that, the conversation continued. Like nothing happened, but I was left with that weird feeling in my stomach. You know, like when you know something's not right but you can't identify exactly what. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All those signs were there, but I was so stuck in my own head thinking everything was fine that I just ignored them. I guess it's easier to pretend you don't see problems than to face them directly, right? Anyway, we get to March of this year, like 3 months before the wedding date, and one night Paige came home and told me we needed to talk. You know, when someone says we need to talk, it's never anything good. Like never in the history of the world has someone said we need to talk and then dropped good news. I sat on the couch and she stood in front of me, and I could see she was nervous because she kept playing with her hands, something she always did when she was anxious. She said, and I swear these were her exact words because they're burned into my brain, "Spencer, I need you to be honest with me." And I told her I was always honest with her, and she continued saying she needed to tell me something but didn't want to hurt me. I told her to just tell me whatever it was, and she dropped the bomb. She told me that Colin, her ex, had contacted her like 2 months ago, that they'd been talking, that he'd apologized for how things ended, and that she felt there were unresolved things between them. I just sat there processing what she was telling me. Like my brain took like 10 seconds to actually understand what was happening, and when I finally connected the dots, I asked her what exactly unresolved things meant. Paige sat down next to me and took my hand, and that somehow made it worse, like she was treating me like a little kid you have to carefully give bad news to. She told me she loved me, that I was an amazing man, that it had been the best relationship of her life, but that she felt she needed to explore whether there was still something between her and Colin before marrying me. She wanted to take a break. Those were her words. Take a break to see if what she felt for Colin was real or just nostalgia. She promised me that if it turned out to be just nostalgia, she'd come back and we could continue with the wedding plans like nothing had happened. I don't know how to explain what I felt in that moment. It was like my whole body had disconnected from the world, like I was watching the scene from outside instead of living it. I asked her how much time she needed for this break, and she said she didn't know. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. I asked her if she'd already been with Colin during these 2 months they'd been talking, and she swore no, that they'd only talked on the phone and by text, but she wanted the chance to see if they could try again. Basically, she was asking me for permission to date her ex, while I sat around waiting to see if she decided to come back to me or not. The crazy part is, yell, didn't cry, didn't throw anything, or make a scene. I simply looked at her and told her, "Okay, take your break." She seemed surprised. I think she expected me to beg her or tell her not to go. But honestly, in that moment, all I wanted was for her to get out of my sight, because I felt like if I kept looking at her for one more second, I was going to explode. I told her she could stay at her mom's while she figured out what she needed to figure out, and she started saying it wasn't necessary to be so drastic, that we could keep living together in the meantime. And I told her no, that if she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. And I wasn't going to stay in the same house, watching her talk to her ex every night. She packed a suitcase that same night and left. She told me she loved me before leaving, and I said nothing, just closed the door behind her. As soon as she left, I called Tristan. It was like 11 at night, but he answered immediately, and when I told him what happened, he went quiet for a moment and then said, "Spencer, what the fuck? Man, I'm so sorry." He asked if I wanted him to come over, but I told him no, that I just needed to be alone for a while. I spent that whole night awake, sitting on the couch where hours earlier Paige had told me she wanted a break to be with her ex. I didn't cry, which is weird because I'm the type who cries at sad movies, but I think I was still in shock. I just sat there thinking about the whole relationship, about all the times she told me she loved me, about how we planned a whole life together, and how none of that mattered enough to her not to want to try something with the guy who cheated on her in college. Like 3 days went by without Paige contacting me. Nothing. Not a message, not a call, nothing. And honestly, with each day that passed, I got more clarity about the situation. On the third day, she sent me a message asking if we could talk, and I told her yes, to come to the house. She arrived around 6 in. In the evening, she looked tired, or maybe it was that I was seeing her with different eyes. I don't know. She sat in the same spot where she'd given me the news about the break and told me she'd been thinking a lot, that she understood this was difficult for me, but that she appreciated me giving her the space she needed. Then she dropped her big idea, which was to postpone the wedding for a few months, maybe 6 or a year, to give her time to resolve all this without the pressure of a deadline approaching. I listened to her talk, and when she finished, I simply told her, okay. She seemed relieved. I think she thought she'd convinced me to wait for her like an idiot. And she started talking about how this would be good for us in the long run, that it would make us stronger as a couple. I let her talk for a while longer, and then told her she was right, that we definitely needed to postpone the wedding. She smiled and tried to hug me, but I stood up and told her that, in fact, I'd decided to cancel the wedding completely. She froze. Like she literally froze with her arms in the air mid-hug and asked me what I was saying. I explained very calmly that I wasn't going to sit around waiting like a backup plan while she decided if her ex was what she really wanted, that if after 4 years together and a year engaged, she felt she needed to explore a relationship with someone else, then clearly I wasn't enough for her, and that was okay, but I wasn't going to participate in that game. Paige started crying and telling me it wasn't like that I was enough, that she just had normal doubts before the wedding. I told her that normal doubts before a wedding are about whether the venue you picked is right or if you should invite your annoying aunt, not about whether you should be with another person. I told her she could take all the time she needed with Colin, that I wouldn't be waiting for her on the other side, but that I genuinely wished her the best. She begged me to reconsider, told me I was making a mistake, that I'd regret it, but I'd already made my decision and wasn't going to change it. The next day, I started canceling everything for the wedding. I called the venue. There was a penalty for canceling, but honestly, I couldn't have cared less. I called the photographer, the catering guy, the florist, everyone. I lost quite a bit of money on deposits and advance payments, but the truth is I felt enormous relief. With each call I made, like each cancellation was one more step toward getting my life back. I also called a real estate agent and put the house up for sale. Paige and I had bought that house together. Well, like I said, technically I'd bought it, but the plan was always for it to be our family home, where we'd raise our kids and grow old together. And now I couldn't even look at the living room without thinking about her, asking me for a break to be with her ex. I needed to get out of there as fast as possible. I started packing all of Paige's things in boxes. She had quite a bit of stuff in the house, clothes, books, her design materials, framed photos of us that I had to take down from the walls one by one. Each photo was like a reminder of how stupid I'd been for not seeing the signs. Like in one of them, we were at the beach last summer laughing and hugging. And I thought, how is it possible that just a few months after that photo, she's talking to her ex behind my back? I packed everything very carefully. I don't know why. I guess despite everything, I didn't want to be an asshole and throw her stuff out like it was trash. When I finished packing, I called her mom and told her I was going to bring Paige's things, if she could make sure Paige wasn't there when I arrived because I didn't want drama. I arrived at her mom's house with my truck full of boxes, and sure enough, Paige wasn't there. Her mom came out and helped me unload the boxes without saying much. She just told me I'm sorry, Spencer, and I told her she didn't have to apologize for anything, that things just didn't work out. I left all the boxes in the garage, and on top of the last one, I put an envelope with a note I'd written that morning. The note basically said here were all her things, that I'd canceled the wedding and put the house up for sale, that she could keep the engagement ring if she wanted to sell it or whatever, and that I wished her the best in her life. It wasn't a cruel note or anything, just direct and to the point. I left there feeling like I'd closed a chapter of my life in the most dignified way possible. Like a week went by, and Paige showed up at the house. I was packing my own things because the agent had told me there was interest in the property and I needed to have it ready to show. She knocked on the door, and when I opened it, she looked horrible. Like puffy eyes from crying, unwashed hair, wearing sweatpants I recognized as the ones she wore when she was depressed. She asked if we could talk and I let her in. She sat, on the couch, the same damn couch where this whole mess had started, and started crying. She told me she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, that Colin hadn't changed at all, that he was still the same selfish guy who cheated on her, that all he wanted was to sleep with her, and that when she told him she wanted something serious, he'd told her he wasn't ready for that level of commitment. She told me all this like she expected me to feel sorry for her or something. She told me she realized I was the best man she'd ever met, that she'd been an idiot for risking what we had, that if she could turn back time, she never would have talked to Colin. Then she noticed the boxes and the for sale sign in the yard and asked me what I was doing. I explained again that I'd canceled the wedding, that I was selling the house, that I'd already signed the lease for a new apartment. She got hysterical, started screaming about how I could be doing all this so fast that clearly I never cared about her if I could get over it so easily. That's when I lost my cool a bit. I told her not to dare say I didn't care, that I'd spent 4 years of my life completely dedicated to her, that I'd planned my entire future with her in it, that I'd proposed because I was sure I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her, and that she'd thrown all that in the trash for the possibility of getting back together with someone who'd betrayed her years ago. I told her that what she saw as getting over it quickly was simply me having enough self-respect not to sit around waiting while she decided if I was good enough after her plan A didn't work out. She kept crying and begging me to give her another chance, that we could go to couples therapy, that she'd do anything to fix things. I looked at her and told her, Paige, even if I gave you another chance, even if we pretended none of this happened and continued with the wedding, how could I trust you again? Every time you go out with your friends, I'm going to be wondering if you're really with them or with another ex. Every time you're on your phone laughing, I'm going to think you're talking to someone else. That's no way to live, and it's not what I want for myself. I told her to leave, that there was nothing more to talk about. She left crying and screaming that this wasn't over, that she was going to prove to me we could work. The next few days were crazy. Paige started calling me like 20 times a day, sending me messages all the time, showing up at my work like a stalker. My coworkers started asking me what was going on, because she literally sat in her car outside the office waiting for me to come out. I had to talk to my boss and explain the situation, which was super awkward because he knew Paige, they'd gone to the same university or something, and he always asked about her. When I told him what happened, he went quiet for a moment and then told me he was very sorry, that if I needed to take a few days to take them. But the worst part was when Paige started contacting my family and friends with her own version of the story. She was telling them I'd broken up with her out of nowhere, that I was going through a quarter-life crisis or something, that I needed help. My mom called me super worried, asking if I was okay, that Paige had told her I'd canceled the wedding without giving a reason. I had to explain the whole situation to my mom, which was horrible because she adored Paige and had been super excited about the wedding. When I finished telling her everything, my mom went quiet for a moment and then told me, "Son, you did the right thing. Nobody deserves to be treated like a backup plan." My friends also started getting messages from Paige. Tristan called me and told me she'd sent him like an essay explaining that I was being irrational, that she'd only asked for time to clarify her feelings, and that was normal before a commitment as big as marriage. Tristan replied that what she'd done was anything but normal, and to stop contacting my friends. Other friends weren't as direct, and some even asked me if maybe I was being too hard on her, that we all have doubts, that maybe I should give her another chance. But that hurt more than I expected, because I felt like I had to justify my decision, as if it wasn't obvious that what she did was wrong. I sold the house in like 3 weeks, which was a record according to the agent. The buyers paid cash and wanted to close quickly, so it was perfect for me. I moved into my new apartment, which was smaller, but in a better area of the city, closer to my work, and I started decorating it completely different from how we decorated the house. None of the furniture we'd bought together, nothing that reminded me of her. Basically, I started from scratch, and honestly, it felt good. Like each new piece of furniture was a declaration that I was building a life that was only mine. Paige somehow found out my new address, probably asked someone, and showed up there, too. This time she brought one of her friends as moral support or something. Her friend told me I was being cruel, that Paggy was devastated, that she'd only made a mistake and everyone deserves a second chance. I told her friend very politely that I appreciated her caring about her friend, but this wasn't her problem, and both of them needed to leave my property. Paige tried to grab my arm and beg me one more time, but I pulled away and went into my apartment, closing the door. I heard them outside for a while until they finally left. I decided I needed to cut off all contact completely. I blocked Paige on my phone, on all social media, on email, everywhere. I told my mom and friends to please not pass along any messages from her, that I needed to move on and keeping any kind of communication would only make things harder. Most understood. Some thought I was being extreme, but it was my life and my decision. Like a month after moving, my friend Brooke called me and said she needed to tell me something. She told me Paige had been posting things on social media, quotes about second chances and about how people who really love you fight for you, that kind of passive-aggressive stuff that was clearly directed at me. She was also posting old photos of us with captions like the best moments of my life or wishing I could turn back time. Brooke told me she thought I should know in case someone asked me something, but honestly, I didn't care what Paige posted on the internet. I'd already blocked everything. I wasn't going to be checking what she was doing. What did bother me was when I found out she was telling people I'd left her because I'd met someone else. Several mutual acquaintances started asking me about my new girlfriend, and I had no idea what they were talking about. When I asked them where they got, that they told me Paige had told them she'd discovered I was seeing someone, and that's why I'd canceled everything so quickly. That pissed me off because it was a blatant lie and because she was trying to make me look like the bad guy. I decided to send a group message to our families and close friends, explaining exactly what had happened, without unnecessary details, but making it clear that the reason we broke up was because she asked me for a break to be with her ex, not because I'd met someone else. The response was mixed. Some people supported me completely and told me I'd done the right thing. Others thought I was being petty by sending that message, that I should have handled it more privately. But honestly, I didn't care anymore what people thought. I'd spent weeks trying to be the most mature, the calmest, the most reasonable. And meanwhile, Paige was out there making up stories and playing the victim. It was enough already. The social media posts continued for a while. Paige kept posting things about lost love and wasted opportunities. Her friends commented supportive things, like, "You deserve someone better," or "his loss, not yours." I still wasn't seeing any of this directly because everything was blocked, but mutual friends kept me in the loop from time to time, even though I told them I wasn't interested. Miles, another friend of mine, told me at one point that maybe I should consider talking to her one last time so she could have closure, and I told him it wasn't my responsibility to give her closure, that she'd made her choices and now had to live with the consequences. The drama finally started to calm down like 3 months in. Paige's posts became less frequent. She stopped showing up at my work, stopped contacting my friends and family. I heard through the grapevine she'd started dating someone new. Not Colin, obviously, because that ship had sailed and sunk, but someone she met on some app. I didn't care. Honestly, I didn't even feel jealous or anything. I just thought, good for her, I hope she knows what she wants now. I also started dating again. Nothing serious, just casual dates to remind myself there were other people in the world. I wasn't looking for a serious relationship because I was still processing everything that had happened, but it was good to go out and have fun without the pressure of wedding plans or shared futures. My friends invited me out more often, and I accepted instead of staying home, feeling sorry for myself. Today, I'm doing well. Honestly. I live in my apartment that I love. I have a job that pays well, friends who support me, and basically I got my life back. I'm not going to lie and say everything was easy or that I never felt bad about how things ended, because there were definitely nights where I stayed awake, thinking about everything we'd planned together and feeling enormous sadness about the loss of that future. But over time, I realized I didn't lose anything real. I lost the idea of something that was never going to work anyway. Last week, a friend asked me if I'd ever forgive Paige or consider getting back with her if she reached out again. I told him no. That chapter of my life is completely closed. It's not that I hate her or anything. There's just nothing there anymore. No love or resentment, just indifference. And I guess that's the healthiest thing, right? Being able to look back and see that whole situation as simply something that happened, something that taught me a lot about myself and about what I do and don't want in a relationship. I learned it's okay to set boundaries and respect yourself, even when other people think you're being too harsh. I learned that love shouldn't make you feel like a plan B or a backup option. And I learned that sometimes the best decision you can make is to simply walk away and let things die instead of trying to resurrect something that's already rotten from the inside. I don't regret ending things when I did. Honestly, I think it was the best thing I could have done for myself, and that's enough.